Okay, so getting right into it, today's deep dive um, tackles some pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
We're looking at this situation where a woman turned her own mother in to the police for robbery.
Wow.
And it's really sparked a lot of conversation online
Yeah.
about the complexities of family loyalty
Yeah.
and when is it okay to kind of um, step back from those obligations.
Right.
So we'll be diving into a Reddit post where this woman actually sought advice, and the reactions are just all over the place.
It's interesting how this story, which at its core is really about family,
Right.
triggers such different responses from people. Some are advocating for tough love,
Yeah.
others are urging compassion and forgiveness. And I think at the heart of it all is this question of how far does family loyalty actually go when serious crimes are involved?
Yeah, you'd think there would be a simple answer, right? Like, crime is crime, but
Okay.
it's not so clear-cut when you start digging into the details of this woman's post.
Right.
Her mom has a pretty extensive criminal history.
Oh, wow.
5 prison sentences, to be exact,
Oh, jeez.
and a history of being just absolutely abusive towards her daughter.
That context is really important, I think, because it's not just about this one robbery, right? It's about a lifetime of manipulation and trauma that this daughter's had to endure.
Yeah.
And her trying to break free from that cycle, the robbery itself, it seems like it was kind of the final straw.
Mm-hmm.
Her mom gets out of prison and immediately gets caught up in another crime,
Right.
even expects her daughter to be the getaway driver.
It's crazy. Like, you get out of prison and the first thing you do is commit another crime.
Yeah.
It really shows you how ingrained those patterns of behavior can be.
Yeah.
And for the daughter who's now raising her brother's kids, this was like a huge slap in the face.
Right.
Her mom was openly hostile towards her parenting choices, even tried to use child protective services against her.
And that's where I think things get really complicated, because on the one hand, it's a crime, and reporting a crime, feels like the right thing to do. But on the other hand, it's your mother, and the daughter even admits that she called the police in a moment of anger. So that kind of adds another layer of complexity. Like, is it about justice? Or is it about revenge?
It's almost like she got swept up in this whirlwind of emotions.
Right.
Years of resentment and fear and maybe even guilt, and suddenly she's making this life-altering decisions that impacts both of them.
Yeah.
And that internal conflict that she's going through really comes out in the Reddit responses, too.
Yeah.
You see people wrestling with these same questions, like, where do you draw the line?
Exactly. Some people are totally on the daughter's side, saying she has every right to protect herself and the kids, even if it means cutting off contact with her mom completely. But then you have others who are more cautious, warning her about potential retaliation from the mother, or urging her to consider the psychological impact this decision might have on her in the long run.
It's like this tug-of-war between what we think we're supposed to do for family and what's actually healthy for ourselves.
Right.
And honestly, I think a lot of people listening can relate to that, even if it's not as extreme as this particular situation.
Right.
We've all had to set boundaries with family at some point, right?
Absolutely. And I think the responses to this Reddit post, they really highlight the spectrum of approaches that people take. Some folks are all about laying down the law, saying you need to prioritize your own well-being no matter what.
Right.
Others are more about trying to understand where the mom's behavior is coming from, suggesting that maybe it stems from her own unresolved trauma.
It makes you wonder if any of those commenters actually changed their minds after reading about the mom's history.
Right.
Or if they just doubled down on their initial opinions.
Yeah.
Such a multifaceted situation.
It really is. And it raises questions that go beyond just this one family. It forces us to think about how we as a society deal with crime and punishment, especially when it involves people we're close to. Do we prioritize rehabilitation, retribution, or is there some other approach that we should be considering?
It's a lot to unpack.
It is.
And we're just getting started.
Yeah, and what I find particularly interesting is how the Reddit community's advice goes beyond just the legal aspects of the situation.
Oh, yeah?
There's this genuine desire to support the daughter emotionally, to help her navigate the psychological fallout of this whole ordeal.
Yeah, a lot of the comments were focused on therapy setting boundaries, even practical advice like changing her locks and stuff to protect herself from potential backlash.
Which is crucial, because while this situation started with a crime, we can't ignore the human element. This woman's dealing with years of trauma inflicted by someone who's supposed to love and protect her.
Absolutely. This isn't just some theoretical ethical dilemma.
Right.
This is real life with real consequences.
Yeah.
And I think exploring that emotional complexity, the psychological impact of it all, is what's going to make this deep dive so valuable for our listeners.
I agree. And that's where it gets really fascinating. You know, how people go beyond just the legal stuff. You see them trying to put themselves in her shoes and offer support, you know, from their own experiences.
Yeah, some of the comments were surprisingly, insightful.
Yeah.
Like, one person talked about cutting ties with their own abusive parent,
Right.
how freeing it was, but also the guilt that came with it.
That guilt, that's a big theme in the responses. Even those who are totally on board with her decision, they get it.
Yeah.
Turning in your own mom is going to be heavy, you know?
Right. It's like, logically, it's the right thing to do for your safety and everyone else's. But at the same time, it feels like you're betraying this bond,
That's it. That conflict makes this so relatable, even if most of us haven't gone through something this big.
Right.
It makes you think about your own beliefs about family duty to people who've hurt you.
Absolutely. I was surprised by how many people were pushing for therapy. Not just for dealing with a childhood trauma, but
Right.
the fallout from this decision too.
It makes sense because even if you feel you're doing the right thing, there's going to be a psychological impact.
Yeah.
Like you're cutting off this tie that's been there your whole life.
Right.
It can really mess with you.
And some people even went further than therapy,
Okay.
suggesting she cut off all contact, maybe even move.
It's like the nuclear option.
Yeah.
But for folks who've been there themselves, it's often the only way to truly break free, you know?
It's like there's this wisdom in the Reddit community,
Yeah.
People who learn the hard way now, trying to help others avoid it.
That's right.
And that advice about protecting herself from retaliation,
Oh, yeah.
it really shows they get it.
Uh-huh.
This mom might not take it well,
Nope.
and she needs to be ready.
It's a side of family we don't talk about enough,
Right.
but it's real for so many.
Yeah.
And it shows how this goes way beyond courts and laws.
Yeah. This is about survival. Protecting yourself not just physically, but emotionally.
And that brings us to the cycle of trauma idea. It's not just about why this mom is the way she is, but also
Right.
how those patterns can repeat in the family.
So it's not just her protecting herself,
Yeah,
but protecting those kids.
exactly. Breaking that cycle so they don't end up in the same spot years later.
And the Reddit community, whether they use those words or not, they seem to get it.
They do.
There's this wanting to help her build a healthier life for herself and the kids.
Right. Stopping that pattern.
It's like they're giving her a map, even if it's just pieced together from their own struggles.
And that's the power of these online communities.
Yeah.
A space to share, offer support, learn from each other's mistakes.
It's like a support group,
Yeah.
but anonymous so people can be more honest.
And that honesty, even if it's tough,
Yeah.
can be so valuable, makes you face things you don't want to see.
Like those comments that were more critical of the daughter, saying she enabled the mom for too long.
Yeah.
At first I was like, wow, harsh.
Yeah.
But thinking about it, they had a point.
It's easy to get caught up in the emotion of it all, especially with family.
Right.
But sometimes tough love, I guess, what's needed.
Yeah. It's like you gotta love people from afar sometimes. Put yourself first, set those boundaries.
Tough, but sometimes it's the healthiest choice.
And that's not easy,
Nope.
especially when we're taught family comes before everything.
It goes against everything we're told, but sometimes
Yeah.
it's the best thing for everyone involved.
This is heavy stuff.
It is.
But so I think it's important we talk about it,
Absolutely.
acknowledge how complicated family can be and how much it affects us.
It's fascinating how this story that started with a crime turns into this exploration of psychology, ethics, what family even means.
It's like by looking at this one post,
Yeah,
we're finding these universal things we all connect with.
we are. And I think the way people responded with all their different views, it gives us a map for these tough situations.
It does.
There's wisdom there, even if there's no one right answer.
It reminds you you're not alone.
Good.
Other people get TIT. They've been there.
And hopefully by talking about it,
Yeah.
we can get rid of the shame around it.
It's like, that's the goal, right?
Yeah.
Make a space where people feel okay sharing their stories,
Exactly.
asking for help.
To find a way to heal.
And that path, as we've seen,
Mm-hmm.
it's not easy.
No, it's
It's
not.
full of twists and turns.
But it's worth it
It is.
for ourselves and those who come after us.
Yeah, I think this Reddit post, as messy as it is,
Yeah,
it shows us that healing is lossable.
it does. It reminds us that even when things are really tough, there's always hope.
Yeah.
Hope for healing, for growth.
And maybe, just maybe, by talking about this stuff openly,
Right.
we can chip away at the stigma
That
so that family can be what it should be.
A safe haven.
I feel like we've just scratched the surface here.
I know, right? That's how these deep dives go.
You start with this seemingly straightforward story,
Yeah.
and then bam,
It just unravels.
you're down this rabbit hole of interconnected issues.
Exactly.
And in this case, that cycle of trauma idea, it's huge,
It is. It's like the undercurrent to everything.
affecting not just them, but maybe generations to come.
Like ripples, the pain from the past just keeps spreading.
It affects relationships, behaviors, how people see the world.
And it's so sneaky because often people don't even realize it's happening.
It's just how things are, you know?
It becomes the family's normal.
Their script.
Passed down, and breaking free from that takes so much
Oh, yeah.
awareness, courage, support.
And that's where those Reddit responses are so powerful. They're not just giving advice, but sharing their own BNS
Exactly.
to break free from the same thing.
It's like a chorus of voices saying, hey, you're not alone. We get it. And you can build a different life.
And they offer all these different ways to do that.
Right. Some are all about that tough love.
Boundaries, cutting people off.
Well, others are like, let's try to understand the root cause, therapy, compassion.
And I think both sides have a point.
Yeah, it's not about one right answer.
It's about realizing there's a whole range of approaches.
And what works for one person might not for another,
You got to find what's right for you.
based on your situation and what you think a healthy family looks like.
And let's face it, what healthy family means, it changes.
Oh, absolutely what worked for our grandparents.
Totally different now.
Exactly. And that's okay.
The important thing is we keep talking about it.
Keep questioning, keep pushing back against old ideas.
Because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
we want families to be sources of support and love.
Not trauma and dysfunction.
And that starts with seeing those old patterns.
And making a choice to do things differently.
Rewriting the script.
For ourselves and for the future.
And this Reddit post, messy as it is,
It really does show us that change is possible.
there's hope, even in the tough stuff.
Hope for healing, hope for growth.
And by talking about it openly, maybe we can finally break down the stigma.
So families can be that safe haven.
So well said. What about our listeners?
Yeah, what do you think?
Have you had to set boundaries with family?
What advice would you give someone in a similar spot?
Share your stories, your thoughts in the comments.
We're all in this together, figuring it out as we go.
And if you like these deep dives, hit that subscribe button.
New episodes every week, all sorts of topics.
Find us on YouTube, too. Just search Shauna Palage.
We've got tons of content over there.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those tough questions.
And keep the conversation going.